I think it's fair to ask the question of, does every acre in the field require the same rate of nitrogen? And when you think about environmental variability and the influence of water on really the mechanisms that influence nutrient availability and nutrient loss in terms of nitrogen, i.e. denitrification, mineralization, mass flow, we know that certain environments obviously are going to require different rates to produce a bushel. And so given that, does it really make sense to put the same rate of nitrogen and sulfur on every acre? And with the commodity prices where they are, and with input costs where they are, and of course they're better than they were last year as far as the inputs, but commodities have obviously tailed off. And we have to be as efficient as possible with the investments that we're making while maximizing productivity at the same time. And so when I think about that, if we're over applying nitrogen on certain acres that just don't need as much due to the environmental components that allow for high rates of mineralization, then we could be spending 15 to 20 bucks an acre more than we need to. And then on other environments where we're short, we could be limiting yield potential. And even the commodity prices where they're at today, that could be a significant hit if we don't have enough nitrogen and sulfur to meet the demand within that environment. And our strategy there, when you think about nitrogen protection, is season-long protection in the first half of the ball game and the second half of the ball game. The first half of the growing season starting in the fall for guys that are putting on fall ammonia, and then the second half really from June through August as we go through grain fill. And if we're not protecting nitrogen season long, particularly in a year where we have the low ground or that saturated acre losing nitrogen due to denitrification, then that's a major miss as far as an opportunity to maximize yield. And so protecting that acre becomes incredibly important from a nitrogen stabilizer standpoint throughout the growing season. And when we think about two different years, again, we think about 2021 being very wet years where the low ground was the at-risk acre and pulled yield away due to severe denitrification. In 22 and 23, we were drier. And it wasn't the low ground that pulled yield away. It was really more the high ground or that water limited acre where water runs away from. And when we run out of water on that high ground, we have less mineralization, we have less mass flow of nitrogen and sulfur into the plant. And so it becomes critically important to have the right concentration of nitrogen and sulfur on that high ground or that water limited acre. So when we do get moisture in late June or July, we can move a lot of nutrients into that plant very quickly before that water limited acre dries out again. And again, when we think about 22 and 23, that was a game changer where we had higher concentrations of nitrogen and sulfur. When we did finally start getting some rain, we could move a lot in the plant really quickly. It's a race. And getting nitrogen and sulfur in the plant as efficiently as we can before that water limited acre dries out again, it was a game changer. And it had a significant impact on the overall yield, particularly on that high ground. If we understand that certain environments in the field are maybe 3 or 4 times at greater risk of denitrification, does it really make sense to put the same rate of a nitrification inhibitor on the acre where we rarely, if ever, have seen denitrification, which would be the water limited acre or the high ground, versus that low ground, that saturated acre where we know water runs to, and we're more than likely going to have high rates of denitrification. And again, in some cases, 3 or 4 times greater risk. Why would we put the same rate of a nitrogen protectant on the high ground versus the low ground when we know certain environments are at greater risk? And if we're over applying nitrogen protectant, then that could be costing us money that we don't need to be spending, as well as potentially bushels by keeping it in the ammoniacal form too long. And if we're under applying on certain environments that we know are high risk of denitrification when we have wet periods, then that could be, again, a missed opportunity to keep that nitrogen in a stable form and allow that to be available for plant uptake later in the year. I've talked to several producers about the fact that in February in the state of Illinois, we were on average 8 to 12 degrees warmer than normal. 8 degrees warmer in the southern part of the state, probably 10 degrees warmer in the central, and 12 degrees warmer in northern Illinois. Then you go into March of 24, we were on average 5 to 7 degrees warmer. And given the warmer conditions that we had, we likely have had higher conversion rates of fall anhydrous ammonia from nitrogen in the ammoniacal form to the nitrate form, where we've had nitrification at much higher rates than normal. And so given that, there's some models out there that are predicting by May 1st, we may have converted 100% of that ammoniacal nitrogen to the nitrate form if left unprotected. With a protection nitrification inhibitor, we could potentially reduce that by 50%. And then we're putting on a 2x rate, or maybe even higher in some cases, some products that would allow us to put on higher rates, we may reduce that down to 25%. And so, yeah, this year, again, with the warmer temperatures we've had early, we've got to be cognizant of the fact that some of the nitrogen that's already been applied, is at risk or could be at risk in the upcoming days, weeks, and months. And so we need to make sure that if we have an abundance of moisture come through here in even April, May, and on into June, we need to be aware of the different environments and potential for contribution and loss in those different environments. If you want to get in touch with someone from Advanced Agrilytics to discuss your nitrogen and sulfur management strategy, then feel free to jump onto our website, advancedagrilytics.com, or reach out to your local Advanced Agrilytics precision agronomist, and they'll be able to sit down with you and really help you understand the risk and opportunity associated with environmental variability, and again, how these mechanisms influence nitrogen availability and nitrogen loss, not only on a field by field basis, but down to the acre and sub-acre when we look at environmental variability.